What's up, Internet? Welcome back to part 2 of the GSXR 600 fuel issues. If you didn't see part 1, I'll put a link in the upper right-hand corner of the screen. You can check that out. Essentially, took the bike out for a ride. We filled it up with gas. A day or so later, I started to smell gas in the garage. It was leaking out of the headers. Gas got past the piston rings into the oil. So, we've cleaned most of that up, and we're going to see if we can't get Humpty Dumpty back together again. So some people have asked me, why is there a fuel pump? Why is there a vacuum operated petcock on a carbureted motorcycle? So let's take a look real quick. So here's the carburetors. The carburetors are sitting on the intake about yay high. Your fuel pump is inside the gas tank. This is the base plate. And then here's your vacuum operated petcock. This is the vacuum line. It hooks into the intake down below here, right there. And then your fuel line comes off of here and into the carburetors around here somewhere. Once the gas tank is dropped all the way down to the frame, your fuel pump is going to be down here. Your petcock is down here. The fuel literally has to travel upstream to get to the carburetor. And when you have a full tank of gas, gravity alone is enough to get the fuel into the carburetors. But once you start getting around, I don't know, I'm just going to say half a tank, gravity is no longer enough force to feed the fuel upstream to the carburetors. And so you need a fuel pump to do that. And that's why these bikes, even though they're carbureted, they do have fuel pumps, vacuum operated petcocks. All right, here's the old new petcock that was leaking. So essentially, even though there was no vacuum applied, this was continuing to seep out fuel. And so we had to drain the entire tank. Obviously, you're gonna need to drain the tank to take this off. It's pretty low, so pretty much got to drain it all the way out. There's gasket right here. We can see on the fuel pump housing side. There's also 2 washers. This washer stayed on. It didn't come off with the bolt. And then the other bolt still has a washer on it. So just pay attention to that if you're going to remove the petcock. And we didn't have any leakage from this guy, so I'm just going to leave that gasket on there just like it is. Maybe I'll pull it off. I don't know if the new petcock comes with a gasket or not. We'll see. Underneath, on the other side of the petcock, the side that faces the fuel pump, you can see the fuel inlet right here, and you can kind of see where that gasket that's still stuck on the fuel pump case, you can see where that fits into here. You know, one thing I was worried about was we coated the inside of the gas tank, and I was worried that maybe I would find some pieces of that coating coming apart and lodging itself in here somehow. And we may still do that. I'm gonna take these 4 screws off and see if we see anything inside. I don't see any. Let me get a light. Come here, battery tender. You're just gonna have to wait. Charge up the Busa. Get that battery from dying. I don't really see any signs of the liner we added to the tank. I don't see any signs of it coming off or chipping, peeling, or anything like that. So that's a good thing. But it also doesn't explain why this brand new petcock stopped functioning, as it were. we got the plugs back into the bike. Just want to show you something real quick. Usually you have a special socket, a spark plug socket, that's got some, I think it's like some kind of rubber material inside the socket, and it will actually apply like a little bit of suction, and it holds the plug so you can actually drop the plug in with the socket. In my case, my spark plug socket no longer holds the plug, so I was using a magnet to drop it in. The whole purpose of that is not to drop the plug in and screw up the tip. You can actually collapse the tip and affect the spark plug gap, which is not good. And also, when you're checking spark plug gaps, it's best to use a feeler gauge, a wire-based feeler gauge, because it's round. You can use the valve clearance type feeler gauges, which is like that flat, thin piece of metal, but then you know they're not as accurate as a wire gauge. They work. If that's all you got, use that. But if you can, these aren't very expensive and a little bit more accurate than the valve clearance feeler gauges. Anyway, my 2 cents on plugs. I'm gonna need to do this Hayabusa soon. Got the road trips coming up. Before we put the carburetors back on the bike, I'm gonna test the new petcock we've installed and add maybe a gallon-ish of fuel into the fuel tank and apply some vacuum and just make sure that it opens up and lets fuel out like it's supposed to, but then without the vacuum, doesn't seep fuel like the previous petcock did. So let's do that. We put some gas in there, half a gallon we'll say. Sucked on the vacuum line, which is the one I'm holding here. Fuel came out of the fuel line. We drained it into our unsweetened pure leaf, no sugar, real brewed tea bottle. And as you can see, we've got some fuel. This was completely empty. And the best news is the petcock is not continuing to seep out fuel, which the old one was. So this, I think, is a success. And we don't have any fuel seeping from the base where the petcock bolts up to the fuel pump base. I said base like 3 times. So this is goodness. It does beg the question though, what happened to the old petcock, because that was a new petcock. It's got maybe, I don't know, a couple thousand miles on it. It's only a year or 2 old, something like that. So it is what it is. We'll figure it out. That is a future monkey butt problem. Carburetors are back on and we're just about ready to fire this thing up. But before we do that, we're going to change the oil. I'm going to change it cold because it's full of gasoline and I don't think it's a good thing to have that circulating throughout the entire system. So we're just going to drain her cold, put some fresh oil in. I think I'm going to leave the oil filter on because it hasn't ran since everything leaked. So the filter shouldn't have any fuel in it, and I'm hoping maybe that will help, and then maybe I'll do a hot oil change in the future just to kind of try and get as much of the fuel out of the oil as possible. The fact that I'm wearing a Kawasaki Team Green hoodie, holding a Yamaha Yamalube bottle of oil that I'm about to pour into a Suzuki GSXR did not escape me. I'm just not a motorcycle brand racist. Well, this is unfortunate. The bike ran, but it wasn't running right. I thought, give it a minute, let it burn out whatever fuel was left in there, and never really kind of ran normal. I popped up the gas tank and saw that we're leaking fuel again. And you can see it running down underneath the intake boots. So I think maybe there's something more going on here with the carburetors, and we're gonna have to dive into that next. And that's gonna be, unfortunately, another video. You know what to do. Keep the rubber side down. We'll see you in the next video. Bye.